A warm welcome to the History Show here on Uxbridge FM. And as usual, it's a great pleasure to welcome back Ken Pearce, who's chairman of the Uxbridge Local History Society, of course. Good morning, Ken.
Hello, everybody.
Now, your first talk today, the health of Uxbridge in 1849.
Yes, indeed. In the early 1800s, the population of this country grew considerably, especially in the towns and cities. Homes were being hastily built, but with little concern for proper sanitary arrangements. Water supply from wells and pumps was inadequate and often polluted. There were usually no proper drains or sewers, just open ditches, and many poor families lived in overcrowded and unhealthy conditions. The situation became more acute as time went by. Outbreaks of cholera and typhoid were widespread. Smallpox was common. The expectation of life fell alarmingly, with many people living in utterly filthy conditions. And Uxbridge was no exception. In the end, the government was forced to act, and the Public Health Act was passed in 1848. This set up a general board, later Ministry of Health, to oversee the whole country, and local areas were required to set up their own health boards. Inspectors were recruited, whose job was to tour the country, highlight the local problems, and suggest improvements. Uxbridge was one of the first places to request an inspection. And in 1849, William Ranger came here, staying for several days. He consulted the doctors, town leaders, and also poorer people who allowed him to look into their homes. His report is disturbing. Here are some of its conclusions. In the yards and alleys off the High Street, he found overcrowding, especially in the common lodging houses. Landlords placed as many beds as they could on the floor. Men, women, and children slept together in the same room, and there was no proper ventilation. The most alarming result was this. The expectation of life in the town was just over 32 years. And one of the main reasons for that low figure, alarmingly low figure, was that a third of the children born in the town died before their 5th birthday. In the worst areas, the people were never free from some kind of infection. Typhoid was the main killer. Open ditches carried away stagnant filth, often close to houses. Drains contained the remains from slaughterhouses, and only the main street was kept clean. As an example, Mr. Ranger reported on Bell Yard, which was an alley right opposite the market house, where the underground station is today. 266 people were living there in 60 houses, with an open ditch at the back, the receptacle of every kind of filth. Many privies were open with no doors, and near one privy was a manure bed and a pigsty. Some of the people had to walk 2/3 of a mile to fetch water. And in another yard nearby were 13 houses, 2 filthy privies and a slaughterhouse. New houses were being built, but with little regard for cleanliness and common decency. There was no concern for a better water supply or disposal of waste. Open drains and ditches contained animal and vegetable matter in a state of decay. Mr. Ranger had no problem in recommending remedies, although it would take time and money. His main suggestions were work towards an abundant supply of pure filtered water, convert existing privies into WCs, introduce tubular, that is covered, drains and sewers, regulate the number of people allowed to sleep in one room, introduce cleaning of carriageways and footpaths, and introduce good ventilation in homes and schools. Well, in the years that followed, these improvements were gradually made. But, for example, it took another 60 years before every home in the district had a reliable supply of pure water. A final footnote. Do you ever look at the metal plates and covers in our pavements? In some of the older streets, there are still a few bearing the initials LBH, and it's easy to think that they stand for London Borough of Hillingdon. In fact, they date right back to Victorian times and stand for Local Board of Health.
Thanks, Ken. That's great. It's only really, under 200 years ago, isn't it? A lot's changed since then.
It's very sobering, isn't it? Yes, yes. I mean, we turn on a tap and we take it for granted, but alas, it was not so for a long time.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Stay tuned. We've got another one to come.